school corporation's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation as indicated by the agenda. The meeting site is fully accessible. Any person requiring further accommodation should contact the superintendent at the school corporation's central office. With that, as we regularly do, we will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Jones, if you can lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, roll call. We do have a quorum, but Mr. Hendricks and Mr. Clauser are both absent today for other conflicts, so, but we do have a quorum. Mission statement, it's the old one on the agenda, but there is a new one. Mrs. Hutchison, if you could read just the four guiding principles for us.
Okay, the four new guiding principles are that we are student-centered, that will focus on students in all actions and decisions. We're looking towards growth. We achieve more today than yesterday. Service, we serve each other, our families and communities, and high expectations. We believe everyone can be extraordinary.
Thank you. If anybody wants to see those, they are available online on our website. So I encourage you to go out and see that. Gave a full presentation. They are on the website, right? Yeah. But excellent work. Now we will suspend the regular meeting and open up the project hearing and second preliminary determination hearing for the sale of bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Seems like we were just here last week, and it will be an identical hearing, with the exception of, at the end of this hearing, there will be 3 resolutions for the board to consider. And so, as a reminder, the preliminary determination hearings are an opportunity for the public to understand the projects that we're hoping to fund with this financing, the financial impact of this particular financing, and then, of course, any comments from any patrons will be welcomed. And then that is where last week's hearing terminated, but the motions then, should the board consider, would follow here at the end. So we will begin with the educational need of the projects. And so, board, you'll recall this presentation from last week, and really encompasses our 2 what I'll call major projects of this financing, which includes our transportation facility, which heard about from our professional partners back in March and April in terms of the inadequacies that we have at our transportation facility. If you'll recall, that site was originally designed for 12 school buses. Not that Lebanon ever had 12 routes, but in that time, drivers would take buses home with them, and that is not any longer what occurs. And so on a site that was originally determined and designed for 12 buses, we now have 44 sitting spares and normal routes, and those, of course, are wedged in places that they were not originally designed to. Then you'll recall, of course, seeing the administrative space that we have, and the fact that there were 6 parking spots for the staff that work there. So whether that be the director or the mechanic or any bus drivers that don't take their bus home, we had 6 parking spots there. And so we've been asking a lot out of that facility. The pavement is it's seen better days. And so through Schmidt, we've gone through our programming, and our needs as our corporation is no doubt growing, and I know that that's been awfully public with the increasing demand on all of our school facilities, and transportation is no exception. So with that, the site plan that our professional partners have come up with would place this facility at roughly 9 to 10 acres in the northwest corner of our field that we have, our 60 acres that we have there off of John Bart Road in Fordyce. That's the Lebanon Middle School just immediately to the west, and our grounds facility immediately to the north. There are 60 parking spots there, so certainly a little bit oversized for where we are for today, but when you have an opportunity to do something like this, I think we'd be remiss to not take the chance to encompass the growth that we know is coming. Towards the bottom there, that light gray rectangle, that is the new garage, which would feature 2 pull-through bays that would accommodate 4 buses at one time, and then a third wash bay to take care of the the salt and whatnot, and just the general appearance of our buses, rather than taking them to a local truck wash that we are currently doing. Just to the east of that would be our administrative space, where we would house our director and any support staff that we have there. And then those 2 dark gray areas would be our bus driver parking, so they would have a dedicated space to park. What's great about this is it completely segregates the parking for our bus drivers from bus traffic from the lot, which a lot of transportation facilities that were designed decades ago, they would commingle that, and that is an accident that is inevitable at that point. You'll notice the light gray, I'll call it the L-looking structure there, and that is an intentionally placed berm designed to block the sight lines of the facility from our neighbors there to the south and west. And of course, we have tried to tuck the buses as north as possible into that field to mitigate any light pollution or sound pollution that may be generated. Happy to report that we commissioned the acoustical study at the end of last week to understand the best possible orientation of all facets of this site plan to minimize any sound leaving our property. And then obviously in terms of what I'll call light pollution, it sounds bad, but truly with the LED technology of lights that we have nowadays, we can really ensure that light that we create remains on our property to disturb our neighbors as little as possible. So, any questions with the transportation facility from the board before moving on?
No.
Okay.
I like this much better than the original layout, yeah. It is a good layout.
Yep. Apparently a bit of a lag here with, there we go, with our Apple devices here. But that's a zoomed in of the facility itself. So you can see our 2 pull-through bays there in the middle with the wash bay all the way to the left, and then the admin space. I think it's worth noting that there are currently 2 toilets for our 33 bus drivers every day. When all those routes come back, inevitably about the same time, after being on the road for, by the time they finish their elementary and secondary routes, after being on the road for over 2 hours, you can imagine there's quite the rush for the facilities, and we don't have the ability to accommodate that need right now. So we've greatly expanded, which our director is very excited about, and I'm sure the drivers will be too, the restroom facilities of all things. Moving on, our middle school is the other large project that will be financed by these bonds. Quite the change to that site from what we currently have. I know I've spoken many times about the traffic that builds up on Grant Street as parents queue to pick up their students at the end of the day. I will note that we're changing that main entrance and the bus lot. So now the bus lot is where the staff lot and where student pickup and drop-off has occurred there. So in the lower right-hand corner or to the southeast, our professional partners have changed the purpose of that lot to the bus lot, taking staff parking and student drop-off and pickup now to the southwest corner of the building. In order to accommodate and bring all of this traffic onto our property, which we feel we have a responsibility to do, you can see a new roadway that extends Grant Street there to the north and wraps it in to allow the parents to queue through the parking lot there and drop their students off. So quite the radical site plan, and by radical, of course, I mean different from what we are currently experiencing on that site. As we take a look at what the floor plan currently looks like, we really begin to see the limitations and the educational need for this project at the middle school. It's amazing how I continue to try to keep talking and delay. I've changed the slide 17 seconds ago, I promise you. Mr. Martin, I'm not sure what's going on. But at any rate, when you do see the floor plan, I'll call your attention to the cafeteria.
There you go.
There at the lower portion of that, the cafeteria has major supervision issues, meaning our administrative staff there, especially when students excuse themselves to go to the restroom during lunch, completely lose a sight line of our students as the restrooms are behind a wall. Furthermore, our cafeteria kitchen is located, we'll call it landlocked within the building, meaning deliveries are delivered by staff that aren't LCSC staff. They're vendors and they're vetted, but nonetheless, we have staff walking through our building to drop off deliveries. Not ideal, and certainly a design aspect that our professional partners have remedied. This floor plan currently is very devoid of the amount of space that we need to service our students with special needs. In addition, we have some space that we can capture in the form of a media center. That media centers are changing in the 21st century, and they're not gigantic libraries as they have been. By no means are we eliminating a media center, but there's certainly space there that we can capture. And so I probably should have clicked on this about 20 seconds ago, knowing that I wanted it to show up right now. But that will be the programming, and I'll probably just go through and move forward to see the new floor plan, because we know that we're waiting a long time for these new slides to show up. So as this,
There it is.
perfect, that was quicker than we thought. So I think what I want to call your attention to the most here is the size of the corridors. The middle school we know was built in 1964, and people, 75, excuse me, people were smaller then, to be quite frank. And this is about the age where students can make rash decisions when shoulders brush in the hallway, and certainly some altercations have come from tight corridors, and our partners have taken the opportunity to create larger corridors that span the entire length of the building, and what you'll get with that is supervision. You're able to see the entire length of the school. A new cafeteria there is the brown structure to the far left, with a loading dock that will allow deliveries to come directly into the kitchen and never into the school. The media center is there in purple, just next to the cafeteria. Brand new front office in the lower left, which is where the new front door would be, in blue. And then all of that fuchsia, red, magenta color would be our spaces for students with special needs. That we have a growing population there. With that would conclude the projects. In addition, I will say projects that would be captured on this project resolution that the board will consider later would include technology, equipment, renovations to Hattie B. Stokes Elementary, as well as Lebanon High School. But main two projects are there. So any questions with the projects supported by this before we get into the financial parameters?
I do have a question.
Okay.
With the change of the parking lot from where the buses currently are taking the students to middle school, at times there are high schoolers going from the high school to the middle school for practices or whatever, especially during the spring. And with that change in traffic flow, now where will those students be able to go? Because if you're going to have a parent line, they're not going to be able to get to practices. You have the bus line, you can't go to the buses. So I'm just wondering how that will impact the safety of the students moving to and from high school and middle school.
So I think the important thing with this is where we've gotten to in the design phase right now is this is Schmidt's first take at what a potential site that brings that traffic onto our property may look like. What I wonder if could potentially happen is some redesign of the new bus lot in the lower right, and maybe include a drive to get them back there, because certainly I understand the comment with parents queuing on the extension of Grant Street there to the north, sneaking those teenage drivers there through to get to their soccer facility certainly presents
That's a very good
an issue.
point.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want it on the school bus side because then they would be walking in the parking lots to get back to the athletic field. So it would need to be somewhere, I would assume, that's my opinion, sorry.
No.
That it would be more towards where the parent pickup line is, just because that's where they're practicing. Is
Sure.
in those back fields, not in the front of the school.
Sure. Certainly a good topic to broach with Schmidt to ensure that we've got a safe pathway there for our students. Thank you. Others? So you'll recall Mr. Shoemaker from Stiefel was here last week. He sends his regrets, had a family call it family emergency, about an hour and a half before the hearing here tonight. And so I will go ahead and take the financial parameters as well, but he does send his regrets because he had every intention of being here tonight as well. So a quick recap of our current debt situation. Each one of these bars represents the payments that we currently have and the year in which that we will make them. The large bar there to the left are the payments that we're making as a part of this budget year. We are at a great situation where a lot of our obligations are paying off at the end of this year. And so at this time, the only obligation that we have for 2024 is the issuance for the referendum bonds that we did last year. And of course, we do know that we'll be issuing the balance of those referendum bonds that will become payable in 2025, which is the smaller blue column stacked on top of the teal starting in 2025. So with that being said, it allows us to have an opportunity to take on this debt at no cost to the tax rate. And so what this slide is attempting to show right here is bringing on those debt payments in a very conservative manner. As Mr. Shoemaker shared at last week's meeting, the bond market is volatile right now and interest rates are higher, and as such, the structuring of these bonds would be of a conservative nature early on to handle any changing in the market that may take place. And that teal line moving across shows our tax rate staying exactly where it has historically been, just under $1, even as we take on this new debt that's being proposed at this hearing this evening. What you're seeing here is, rather than lumping all of these together with the new debt, showing each individual component of our tax rate, including the operations fund, our operating referendum, our debt service fund, and our proposed bonds there at the very top in that royal blue. And you can see how these all blend together to keep our tax rate stable. So despite taking on this new debt, the tax rate stays stable. Maybe better explained instead of a graph in a table here. 2023, which is the middle of this column here, shows where our current rates are of each of our funds. And so starting with debt service, just under a quarter, exempt debt service up at 28 cents. Our operating referendum was approved at 15 cents, and then the operations fund at 31 cents. With that being said, some statutory changes took place with tax rates this year that will force both our operations rate and our operating referendum rate to drop. Those by statute, the General Assembly has changed some state laws where by statute those will have to drop. And so in addition, with paying off our 2010 referendum, you'll notice that our exempt debt service fund, which is where we pay our referendum payments from, is dropping as well. So that gives us the opportunity to have new debt here in 2023 that does not affect the overall tax rate. And as you can see, Mr. Shoemaker has drawn this up to where the tax rate for 2024 is identical to 2023 at 99.47. So here are the legal parameters that we share at a 1028 hearing. The maximum par amount of the bonds, I know we said last week that we're setting a high water mark at this meeting, meaning we are asking for approval to issue as much as $110 million. As we learn more about the budget and we determine exactly what our needs are in a more refined manner with more detailed budgets, that number can of course come down. What that number cannot do after tonight is go up. 110 million is what we call our high water mark. That would include almost $2 million, $1.85 million for cost of issuance, for a total amount of the project fund of $108,150,000. Stiefel has run these at 6%. As of today, we are still looking at, if we were issuing these, down in the mid-4s. So all of these parameters that we've seen tonight, including the tax rate implications, have baked into them an interest rate that we would be 1.5 percentage points under if we were issuing these today. The estimated interest over the life of this financing would be $97,028,084. An annual lease payment would be maxed out at $12 million. That means each year the most we could make in a payment is $12 million. This next to last line is a line that is intimidating and scary, and please allow me to explain it. By statute, we have to show the maximum tax rate impact as though we have no other debt. So in other words, the amount to make these payments divided by our assessed valuation is just over 53 cents. This does not take into account the debt that we have falling off. That is not a mistake. By statute, we have to report it this way, which is why we've included that last line is the maximum, or excuse me, the net impact on our tax rate would be $0. This is a tax rate neutral issuance. It is what I want to convey in this hearing. So, with that, that concludes both the educational need and the financial parameters. Mr. Parks, I'll turn it over to you to hear any public comment, should there be any.
All right, we do have one individual who has signed up to make a comment, Mr. Kevin Sosby.
Thank you for allowing me to comment. My name is Kevin Sosby, and I live at 1385 North John Bart. My comment deals with the bus garage, and it's really not so much just kind of observation. If you could have the picture of the bus, the footprint of the bus garage up, point out my two observations. That's not the bus garage.
Yeah, it will be. It will be.
Okay.
I see it on my computer.
Okay.
Technology.
Well,
It's coming.
It's coming.
I'll address
There it
there.
is. There it is.
Okay. First comment is, I see the road going off to the east, let's say, to John Bart, which is a good idea. But the only comment I have is, you mentioned 44 buses or whatever that go to the high school, middle school, and whatever. Anytime any of those buses have to go to the middle school or high school, they have to go out John Bart, down John Bart to either Fordyce and wind through Morningside through there and up Grant Street, or all the way down to Washington to Grant Street and back up. Versus if there was some way to connect that over to the roads by the middle school, I realize there's an issue with buses going by the middle school, but those, would save time on the buses and stuff. Also, on the east side there, if you could have something like your L on the east side of the road there, so that the people on North John Bart had the same advantage as the people by the school and down south there, that they get cut the noise, because trust me, we can hear the softball and soccer fields quite easily. So that would also, if you could put the berm in there also, that would be advantageous. So that's my only comments.
Mr. Parks, would you be okay with me responding?
Absolutely, yeah.
I can certainly address your first concern in the affirmative tonight. Thank you for pointing that out. My drawing chopped off here, this does connect.
Oh, okay.
That we are going to connect, so, and I don't know how quickly I'll be able to. So, right here at the very top, this road does connect, and buses going to the middle school and high school will be able to exit the property at the
Through the
northwest corner.
pathway to the
Yes.
maintenance shed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cursor's right there. We do have a site plan that shows this better, but.
Okay,
chopped off
okay,
into
so
two slides.
that will, because that's my main concern is bus traffic coming out and having to
Yeah.
take for
Middle school and high
halfway
school.
around Lebanon, kind of like if you're on John Bart now and want to go downtown, you have to go a long way. You can't go to Washington and cross Grant Street type things. So that,
Goes next to the current buildings and grounds, it connects to that drive.
oh, okay, yeah. That's what, okay.
And
I didn't see that on there.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's
for
not
pointing
up
that
there.
out.
And we have internally discussed that connection and anticipating preserving that land so that then in partnership maybe with the city at some point to be able to connect it through, not building anything in that so that then it's preserved for that connection to the east of the roadway.
Yeah, to the,
Yeah.
over to John Bart,
From John Bart over to.
to the bus garage.
But that's cost prohibitive right now for
Yeah.
us. So that it takes some type of partnership with
The
the
city
city. And it's been positive, but again, they're in
Well,
They have their own financial
I'm
stuff
not going
on it,
to
right?
touch that because
Yeah.
I don't really know.
But preserving that space,
Yeah.
we talked about
Okay.
that so that in long term, it can.
That's the only
hopefully,
things I had on that is the berm on the east side there and then that road, and you already have taken care of that up there to the north, so that was my own concern.
We will be having a public meeting, should this be approved this evening, and that time period passes, that we're confident that we would move forward with the project. And our architects and engineers will be there, and the results should be, by the acoustical studies, should be done at that time too, so that
Okay.
should give you some more information about that.
Okay, thank
Certainly
you.
happy to propose the berm on the other side as well. My concern would be drainage. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that could, and that might just actually be a good visual block
Sure.
too. In
And
our
drainage
favor
there,
as
it
well,
drains
of
away from
kinda
that area anyway,
keeping it
so.
all protected. So that would be a good thing,
Sure.
not just protected for you to see, but for anybody else to see, and maybe
Yeah,
prevent anybody happen to wander over there and, and trying to
kind of look
get
at
into.
what's
yeah,
going on in
yeah.
there.
So it could be a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have any other, we don't have anybody else signed up to speak. So with that, no other comments.
We've got three resolutions.
We've got three
I'd like
resolutions
the
now
board
within
to-
this hearing to be able to.
So the first in your packet is Exhibit A, which is the project resolution. And essentially, the project resolution is sharing the costs of the projects as well as what we have defined as the projects within the financing itself. It certainly mentions the $110 million maximum funding and shares the impact to the debt service tax rate. So with that, I appreciate board consideration of the project resolution for the 2023 bonds.
So do we have a motion to approve the project resolution for these 2023 bonds?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison, do we have a second?
I'll second.
With that, any comments or additional questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
And next item, Exhibit B.
Exhibit B is the preliminary determination resolution. Essentially, this is stating the board's intent to preliminarily determine to issue bonds. The parameters are spelled out in each year of the financing, and it also describes a lot of the things that the project resolution does in terms of the tax rate and the projects that this will finance. Appreciate action on the preliminary determination hearing, or resolution, excuse me.
Do we have a motion to adopt the preliminary determination resolution, or pass the preliminary determination resolution? You stumble with numbers, I do with words, so. Do you have a
I'll
motion? Mrs. Jones. Do we have a second?
I guess that's me.
Mrs. Hutchison? Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next, Exhibit C.
The final one is the declaration of intent to reimburse expenditures, and this is saying that there are reasonable expenditures that the school corporation will incur before the date of closing, whether that be from architectural partners, any type of results of the acoustical survey. These are, of course, expenses that the school corporation would intend to reimburse with the proceeds of these bonds.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve Exhibit C, declaration of official intent to reimburse expenditures? Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. Any additional comments, questions?
Exciting.
Exciting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. With that, all is approved, and we will close the public hearing and reopen the regular meeting with item number 7. Approval of minutes for the May 16th, 23 regular meeting and the June 13th public hearing and special meeting. Do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Jones. Any additional comments, questions? Discussion? All All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is superintendent's announcements and celebrations.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. First of all, I'd like to take a moment to wish the man behind the glass, Mr. Thatcher, happy birthday, as he's given up his birthday to run your board meetings once again from the technology standpoint.
Good way to spend your 23rd birthday, right?
Great way to spend your 23rd birthday, so happy birthday to you back there. Wanted to give the board just kind of a quick update. Been hearing some things likely in the press and others places about textbook fees. It's been a hot topic through the legislature and how that will play out for our families. We have certainly, like all other public school districts, been scrambling a bit, trying to interpret the rules and how this is going to work. Mr. Dennis attended a session through our Indiana Association of School Business Officers in the last 2 weeks to get some guidance. Some of the legislators were there. Just essentially, this is how it works. Still have some outstanding questions about what everything would fit into a curricular item or curricular support item or curricular supply item might be. Textbook's a little straighter line when you're drawing that. But essentially, the advice from the Department of Education is that we are not able to charge or will not charge for curricular support materials to our students. How that will work, and the reason I brought it up in announcements, and not a celebration, but an announcement part of the meeting, is how that will work potentially and what might come before the board in the future. The state has set aside a finite amount of dollars to fund this. So when school districts are not charging families for these curriculum materials, that does not mean that they do not cost money to provide. We will be, like all other public schools, in the same pool, and when curricular fees reach a certain amount, it's $160 million that the state has set aside for this project. They will cut it off and divide all school districts by that amount, and that's how much we will be, the maximum we will be allowed to ask for reimbursement from the state. So the way it will work is we have to expend the dollars for these supplies. Mr. Dennis and his team will create a reimbursement form to the state of Indiana showing that we actually spent the money on these approved items. The problem we'll run into is, let's say that it's $150 per student is the average across the state. If you have a student that's enrolled in, let's say, 3 advanced placement courses, possibly a dual credit course, they're using college textbooks, they're using some very advanced materials, $150 is not going to cover that student's textbook amount. So what the state has advised us to make up the difference is to take it from our education fund. I remind the board that the education fund is what funds our salaries, wages, and benefits for our school-based staff, principals, teachers, instructional assistants, clerical staff, et cetera. So while in the press it might be stated that we are now going to have free textbooks, free supplies for our families, my dad taught me nothing's free. It's going to get paid for some way or another. I'm just setting the table for the board that that's how it will work. So the dollars that we would bring to the table through the collective bargaining process for teachers, for paying those wages, salaries, and benefits to school will likely be impacted in order to make up the difference for how this is going to be paid for. So not really a celebration per se, but just maybe an explanation of how this will work. I'm bringing it to your attention now because we really don't know what that impact will be. It's a bit of a moving target, certainly for this first year. And most likely, Mr. Dennis would be bringing for some type of an allocation request in the spring of 2024 once we know what that dollar amount is. But I fully expect our textbook to run into the red for a period of time, and then they'll have to be made up through a transfer from the education.
And we're not sure if it will stay red or
It'll stay red.
Yeah,
It'll be a red number probably every year unless the legislature changes the allocation amount that they leverage toward this. The Senate, as this was moving through, Mrs. Hutchins may remember this, the Senate was entertaining a bill that this would be a tax credit for K-12 families. So if you have a child in kindergarten through 12th grade and you incurred costs for textbook fees, then you would make that delegation on your state tax form, then you would get a tax credit for whatever amount. But the House version of this is what ended up moving through, but this is how it's going to work for us. That's a lot for announcements and celebrations, but it was an important one. I wanted you to see that and think about it when this comes across, and it's not just a part of his claims report in the spring. There's some new territory Indiana's forging here and how this
Will we
works.
have to increase the budget line then, or budgets for that, I would anticipate, for those expenses that we had anticipated?
October budget hearing, we may have to adjust it.
So as an interfund transfer, yes. So as I prepare the 2024 budget, we'll throw a placeholder number in
Yeah.
there that will assume worst-case scenario in order for us to make that transfer from the education fund to textbook rental fund in order to offset those charges that were not reimbursed by the state.
Okay. Great.
So a fun one, not so fun one, right? Legislative update, several bills that were passed late in the session. I encourage you, I believe board members received the same email from Julie Slavens today, and I would encourage you to click through that. There's some new requirements. I won't list them here. It's as long as the table that we're going to be implementing. Some laws go into effect July 1st, some laws go into effect in January of '24. But I do encourage you to click on some of her links because they'll likely be bringing some policy changes to you in response to those. Other than that, I just have some thanks to our high school staff, custodial staff, everyone who made our graduation a success. Congratulations to the Hutchinsons and the Jones and the Ottingers for their graduates, and just wanted to thank everyone for their hard work. And Lexi, the pictures that made it to the Facebook page and parents were able to capture and take with them were outstanding. So thank you for that as well.
And thank you for whoever had to clean up all that confetti.
Yeah,
Sure,
it's
right?
a yearly thing. So again, our custodial staff does a great job. So hopefully they got a little extra thanks for that as well. We're very pleased with the turnout and the participation in our groundbreaking ceremonies recently at Harney Elementary and Perry Worth Elementary. Thanks to our professional partners, Meyer Najum, for setting that up, providing breakfast for everyone that was there. It was great, and Gibraltar for providing some renderings that we can put in our lobbies and celebrate that. So we thank them for that. It was really neat to see our students and teachers being the first ones with the shovels full of dirt and turning those over for these exciting projects. So I want to congratulate everyone for that and thank them for that. And lastly, I just want to encourage the board as we look forward, believe it or not, we're looking forward and planning for the start of the school year. We have to be in that mode in the summer. We are very thrilled to bring Dr. Bill Daggett, nationally renowned education thought leader. He's if there's somebody who kind of melds the role of a futurist and an education thought leader, Bill Daggett is that gentleman. He has been predicting and preparing school districts for forward-thinking technology innovations for decades, and he is going to be addressing our staff on July 31st. So I encourage the board to be there if you can at all. He is again, he's a nationally renowned speaker and thought leader, and he would be worth your time. He is going to be there all morning, so basically from 8 in the morning till the lunch hour for 2 large keynote addresses. So even if it's one or the other, will be a break in between, but certainly encourage the board to put that on your calendar and consider attending. And that's all I have for my announcements this evening.
Thank you very much. Next item is informational items. Dr. Millman.
Yes, I do have a required item this evening, and I'm going to capture the screen here. So our first item is regarding our return to school plan. Let's see if I can get this up. See if I have better luck than Mr. Dennis here. Hit it again. There we go. We are required, because we received federal dollars, ESSER dollars. This is in relationship to the ESSER 3 round. And the requirement is that all school districts receiving those federal funds must update the community and at a public meeting on our reentry plan. This is kind of an interesting exercise now that we've kind of moved on from really all of those requirements.
Been re-entered for a
But,
year.
you're going to hear another one of these in December as we continue to move through this requirement. So again, this slide just says what I just said. I guess it will be December, it'll be through September. We'll need to continue providing these updates. You may remember our phases during the COVID lockdown and all of what we were doing with virtual and hybrid and all in between. We are opening at stage 6, which is all schools open, all schools in person. Masks, face coverings, as has been the case for many months, is the teachers, staff members, and students' choice. There's no requirements around that at all, but they are certainly, if they wish to do so, they may choose to do that. We have continued making hand sanitizer available. It's certainly not probably in the quantities and locations that it was in 2020, but we do have those supplies available in classrooms to assist with good hygiene. We have continued with the water bottle filling stations because they work well, and it is a good sanitary way to move forward, and they're installed, and we're continuing to maintain those in all of our buildings. Just a few notes I put on this slide. We do continue to work with the health department. Obviously, if they have issues that they need to make us aware of along the way. There are no current contact tracing requirements. There are some isolation recommendations that we do inform people of when they are positive with COVID-19. So Mr. Martin does continue to provide guidance around that. But we have no restrictions currently with meal service, passing periods, visitors, volunteers, or transportation. So put those in red as well. Put these next slide. This is not part of the requirement. It's just something I like to share publicly and remind folks that the majority of our dollars that were spent through this program have been to help with our students' academic catch-up and success, whether it be tutoring, class size reduction positions, special education, class size reduction, and transportation for those summer school and jump start programs that we have at our elementary. We're continuing to use all of the approved formulas in our cleaning supplies, which is part of that code as well. It's what this slide outlines for you, and a reminder that we did utilize some of the funds for air quality at Harney Elementary, and that is all of my slides this evening. Boy, that's a lot faster than it was in June of 2020. Yes, but again, this is checking that requirement box, and we do thank our custodial and maintenance staff for continuing to do a great job in preparing our buildings and keeping them clean for our students and staff.
And the crowd is much later than October 21 as well, right? So,
It is.
uh,
Happy to answer any questions you may have.
all right. Any questions? All right. Next is a 2024 budget memo. Mr. Dennis.
Yep, just an FYI, I like to prepare this for the board every year, and you did not receive this last year because I was sitting out there last year for this meeting. But just a budget memo so the board is prepared for future meetings where action will take place for the 2024 budget. So nothing other than just a reminder of things to come.
Excellent. School construction and renovation update.
Not a lot of updates, just wanted to share with the board. We continue in your weekly notes. I share with you the weekly pictures. We haven't had any from the softball project for a while. Really, we're just moving a lot of dirt around up there right now until we get the drainage. So there's really not any exciting new pictures for you. And when those arrive, we'll make sure you see them. We have demolished the concession stand and restrooms and have begun that parking area. up there. Only thing I have in addition to that is, and I will can talk to President Parks about this, we may be getting to a point here in August, September, October, that we may want to consider gathering as a board prior to a board meeting. We can arrange for one of our smaller buses that could take us to the sites, maybe tour some of the construction sites before our 7 o'clock meeting. So I'll be throwing out some of that. I'll be talking to Mr. Luce from Meyer Najum about coordinating that. We may even want to consider holding some board meetings at those sites. So if we tour Perry Worth, maybe we want to have a board meeting at Perry Worth, so we're not making, you know, that distance from there as well, and making that trek back here in time for the board meeting. So we'll talk about that in some of our upcoming preparations, but I think it's exciting for the board to see some of that work under
Excellent
construction.
idea.
Yeah.
Get a little dirty, right? Get your
Absolutely.
feet-
Yeah, we'll get your hard hats.
Get the hard hats. All right. Next, we have consent agendas, items, staff matters, classified, certified, and ECA.
Yes, thank you very much. Under 10A for classified this evening, I'm asking for approval of new hires numbers 120 through 123, resignations numbers 124 through 131, and one termination number 132. Under the certified staff, I'm asking for approval of 4 administration intent to retire within 5-year letters this evening, numbers 26 through 29. New hires, numbers 30, it's June, so there's a lot, I
It's
have to turn the
June.
page. 30 through 45. Resignations, numbers 46 through 51, and retirement, number 52. And under ECAs this evening, I'm asking for approval of new hires, numbers 57 through 81. The approval of returning coaches and sponsors, numbers 83 through 107. Volunteer coaches, numbers 108 through 114. And resignations, numbers 115 through 119.
Everybody get all that?
It's June.
It's June.
Yes, we got some great names on there, and some alum. and
Very
some-
nice,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So we have a motion to approve staff matters, classified, certified, and ECA, as noted by Dr. Millman in his rundown of, rather than me repeating those, all those items.
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
If you would allow, I will note that one of the items was a retirement and certified this evening, and I just wanted to, I'll make sure we always pause and thank our retirees, Candy Ballinger, kindergarten teacher Harney. I think one of the reasons she waited until now is she didn't want the fanfare and all that comes with it, but I'll give her at least a pause and a thank you, sincere thank you, for all she has done for our district, our students, and our families. So we certainly wish her well. She's been a great part of our family for many, many years.
Thank you for that. On to consent agenda, business matters.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. As always, financial update included in the board packet this evening. You will notice that the financial update is substantially thicker than it usually is. So with the projects that we have going on at the elementary schools, as always, showing you the payment affidavit for the payments that are paid by the Bank of New York Mellon as they are building court money. And the new item that you'll see tonight as well, stapled to the very front, would be, we'll call it I guess a countdown, if you will. It shows all of the prime contractors at Perry Worth on the front side, and on the reverse is all the prime contractors at Harney. And on the far right, you will see the balance to finish each one of these contracts, any change order exposure that may have occurred, percentage complete. So basically, it's a scorecard of how we're doing in terms of financial progress, which I would argue is also analogous to actual construction progress. But that is accurate as of May 31st. So just providing that in there for your viewing pleasure, of course. So happy to answer any questions on the financial update before, any part of the financial update, that is, before reading the claims.
I appreciate the detail.
I do too.
Yeah, I really do.
I assume Meyer Najum is creating that, or is this you?
I will not take credit for that. Meyer
Yes,
Najum is supplying that for us. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. I'm glad you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Next is approved claims for payment.
So I will preface this and remind the board and anybody that's not a usual at the June board meetings that we pay our debt payments semi-annually, and these payments are on the docket for this month. And so when we read these numbers, they are enormously large compared to what our normal claims are. But again, we make our debt payments in June and in December. So this first number I'm going to read here is going to include the bond payments, and just please understand that $9.6 million of it is our bond payments. So requesting approval from the board for the claims this month in the amount of $12,714,164.14. Two payrolls totaling $2,082,112.81 for total claims of $14,796,276.95.
Excellent job, too. Didn't stumble. Very well done. So do we have a motion to approve claims for 57,857 to 58073 and payrolls for May 26th and June 9th for a total of $14,796,276.95. Mrs. Hutchison, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Comments from public we already had within the hearing. Nobody else. On to action items. Request approval for LED lighting. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you. As Dr. Milliman mentioned, the current softball site does look like a lot of dirt, but they are pouring footers now for dugouts and things of that nature, and it has come time to get those lights on order. And we have always known this number. This is not a new number, but it is contracted through Musco Lighting separately rather than with our prime contractor, Patterson Horth. So requesting approval from the board tonight for our softball lights in the amount of $179,775.
Do we have a motion to approve the contract for LED lighting at the softball field?
I'll motion.
Mrs. Jones, do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hutchison. Any discussion?
Just for both fields?
Just the new
new
field,
field.
yes.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next is approval of fuel contract.
Happy to bring this to the board this evening. I got an opportunity to lock in. We purchase fuel a year in advance. Avoids the volatility in the market that we would as a consumer. So happy to report that we were able to lock in a per gallon diesel cost of $2.63. For the board's awareness, we were at $3.93 a gallon last year, so $1.30 off of last year should be a fantastic savings to the operations fund. So asking approval of the board tonight to approve this retro. Of course, I had to sign it that day, so
Yeah.
I figured the board would
Yeah.
be happy with $1.30 off of this year's price.
Absolutely. Do we have a motion to approve the fuel contract for this year with Co-Alliance? Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. Absolutely the way to do it, and lock it in, and you know your price. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is request approval of appendices to Meyer Najum Master Agreement for Stokes chiller replacement.
Yeah, board, you'll recall early on in February, you approved Lehman's Mechanical as the chiller replacement prime contractor at Stokes. That work obviously did not start then because the cooling season was upon us. Chiller work happens, of course, in the fall and winter. And so putting in front of you tonight an agreement with Meyer Najum to obviously serve as the construction manager for that project. If you'll recall, we have a master agreement in place with them that sets the language for our engagement. And then with each project that they manage, they define a unique set of appendices to that master agreement. And so asking for your approval to Meyer Najum to serve as our construction manager to oversee the chiller replacement at Stokes Elementary at the conclusion of this cooling season.
Do we have a motion to approve this appendices to Meyer Najum contract for the chiller? Mrs. Jones? Do we have a second? This is going to be easy for minutes, isn't it? Yes. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is request approval of pay scale for office staff.
Yes, so a bit of context here for the board. At our elementary schools, we do have 2 front office staff members, admin assistants. However, they've always been paid on 2 different pay scales. One of them was known as the elementary building assistant, and one of them was known simply as the elementary administrative assistant, scale 2 and scale 3. I performed an audit of our classified staff earlier this spring, and really each of the schools utilize those staff members differently, and it just became apparent that we just need to have elementary front office staff and pay them on the same scale. And so what I'm proposing tonight is the elimination of the elementary building assistant position on scale 2, and the proposal to create elementary front office staff, which will be a scale 3 position. The 4 individuals that are currently serving as the elementary building assistants on scale 2 will simply move laterally over to scale 3 with the same number of years experience, same step. So that's what I'm proposing tonight, so that we can compensate both members of the front office staff on the same scale.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the pay scale change for office staff?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Keep it easy.
Keep it easy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of agreement with Cadence Healthcare Training Solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. I think we're very proud of our ability to offer many different career pathways, vocational pathways here at Lebanon High School. One of them certainly is our Certified Nurses Assistant program. We do not employ a Certified Nurses Assistant teacher, so we contract in order to offer that to our students. Cadence Healthcare Training Solutions is the entity that we're contracting with, and so this agreement right here allows us to offer CNA classes to our students for this upcoming school year. Respectfully request approval from the board for that.
Do we have a motion to approve the agreement with Cadence Healthcare Training for Solutions for CNA training?
I'll make the motion.
Mrs. Jones, do you have a second?
I'll make the second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of new elementary MEP equipment.
Last item for me this evening, pleased to bring to the board our first accepted bids for the new elementary school for an equipment purchase. We received 2 separate bid packages a few weeks ago, the first of which is for interior central station air handling units, recommending Trane as the low bid in the amount of $640,660 to provide air handling units for the new elementary school.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve new elementary MEP equipment?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison, she got you.
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of the LHS athletic
Oh,
handbook.
sorry, I got one
Oh,
more.
you do?
Yep. And as a reminder, the reason that we're doing these early, both of these items have 52-week lead times, and so
Okay.
having to get these on board, and this just is equipment, it is not the install. So I know we like to see our budget delta on these. Meyer Nadron does not provide a budget delta on equipment because it's equipment, this is what it
Yeah.
costs. So the second and final is the electrical switchboard equipment, recommending Eckhart Supply as the low bidder in the amount of $62,860.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? Ms. Hutchins? Any discussion?
So I just have a quick question on the switchboard equipment. Is that the same, is that the equipment that works with the communication between the schools? Or is that just the telephone communications at school?
Think of this as like the breaker box in your house, electrical fuses in your house is what this is.
Electrical.
Yeah.
All right.
Different kind of switchboard.
Different type of switchboard.
We'll come with that initially. Yeah. We'll bring that one soon, some point.
We have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to Mr. Levine with the approval of HS Athletic Handbook.
Good evening. Thank you all for allowing me to come in June to speak to you instead of May when all the handbooks are done. One of the main reasons for that is the IHSA executive meeting happens in May, and that's where a lot of changes to the rules occur. And the changes to the handbook this year that I'm bringing to you and that hopefully you have in your the information is basically 2 IHSA rules that changed. Just briefly, they are changing, their medical committee has changed the number of days that the student athletes, if they're out, when they return back to practice, have to practice in reducing those numbers. If they miss 8 to 14 days, from 4 to 2, and if they miss more than 14 days, they're reducing it to 3. And then the second rule that they're changing has to deal with 50-1, which basically states normally a student before the season needs to have 10 practices in before they can compete in an athletic event, and that has been reduced to 6. However, they are keeping the same rule if you're going from one sports season to the next and you've participated in that sport. They are keeping that as 5 days, so the 5 days. The only exception to that rule is golf. We do have 3 practices before we start golf events. Those are the only changes at this time to the handbook, so I'll entertain any questions anybody may have.
Good change.
Good change?
Good change.
Well, yeah. Students like that, right? Do we have a motion to approve the modifications to the handbook? Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is approval of a OTPT contract with Witham.
Yes, these next 2 items probably should have stayed with Mr. Dennis, but I thought his throat might be getting a little dry, so I came in and hit cleanup here. Requesting approval of the Witham occupational therapy, physical therapy contracts. We've continued our engagement with Witham. Our schools are familiar with their staff. You'll see a slight increase in their rate this year. $62 an hour for OT services, which is a $3 increase, and $47 an hour, another $3 increase for that service. And then the physical therapy rate, you see those are at $4 for physical therapy at $68 an hour, and $48 an hour increase for the PTA's services, which is a $3 increase. So we've seen those industry standard increases from time to time as we approve these contracts, but respectfully submit for your approval this evening.
Not going up as much as normal healthcare though, right? There you go.
It doesn't appear that percentage. It's maybe a little close when you do the math, but yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Do we have a motion to approve the Witham OTPT contracts?
I'll motion.
Mrs. Jones. Do we have a second? Mrs. Hutchison. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, approval to use corporate credit card.
Yes, it really would be a Mr. Dennis item here. It's a business service item, but we are requesting that our new high school principal, Mr. Frank Meyer, be allowed to use our credit card and have the same credit limit as our principals have, or high school principal has.
So do we have a motion to approve the use of corporate card for our new principal at high school? Mrs. Hutchison, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval renewal contract for YSPP.
Good evening. The new contract has technical changes of the date, and we found a couple of places where we missed removal of Harney last year. Last year, we moved one from Harney to make two at Stokes because we didn't have room at Harney. We just missed the language in the contract, so that was removed, as was. Mental Health America Boone County requested the student limit, which was always in the contract as 20, be lowered to 14. So we abided by their request. We didn't wish to impose that. They wished to pull it onto that limit on their own. Reference to COVID-19 were replaced with communicable diseases, which is a more universal term used in our world. And where we used to have just security plan, they had to abide by our security standards. We've actually started the building safety and security plan, which involves fire recognition of potential fire hazards and those kinds of items that we do work through at the beginning of each year. So that language was added to this contract that they would abide by the building assigned building safety and security plans.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the renewal contract with Mental Health America for a Young Scholars Prep agreement?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is request approval of renewal contract for base.
Base had only technical changes of the date from last year to this year.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve renewal of the contract for base?
I'll motion.
Mrs. Jones. Do we have a second? Mrs. Hutchison?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of CLIC co-op membership agreement. Mr. Martin.
So this is a request for you to authorize Dr. Milliman to engage with CLIC for our cooperative purchasing. CLIC is one of a couple of options we have. This one happens to be one that Mr. Anstead is familiar with. He's available if you have any questions to with respect to what they do or how they do things, but the contract agreement technically doesn't really hold us to anything terribly problematic. It just brings us in line with a bunch of other schools. With the agreement, we may be pulled into their advisory council and those kinds of things.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the membership agreement with CLIC?
I'll motion.
Mrs. Jones. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hutchison. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next is approval of Protein Food Service Advisors School Menu Solutions.
I put Mr. Anstead on here. This is a agreement to make a purchase of a piece of software and some scheduling information. So basically, if you want more information than what you have in front of you, I'd like Mr. Anstead to come up and answer any of those questions. So
I wonder if it wouldn't be good just to hear, well, hear his voice too, but beyond that. But just to kind of, but no, really, just to see what this does provide in some positive changes that we're going to see.
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons why we've with Sarah Gagowski, who is kind of helping us in an advisory role. One of the things that this will provide, it's not just software, it's actually almost a backup system. When we do the NSLP program, we're inspected on a regular basis. In those inspections, they will look into every aspect of what we do, everything from the nutritional values of how we present the food and how we do that, to the financial side of things, to the actual records that we keep in the kitchen. So Aramark had their own versions of that. After speaking with the staff and so on, this, one of the big reasons that I want to go with this is because their stack of paperwork at every school is incredibly repetitive. A lot of it has been really unnecessary. So this will actually computerize that. So they'll be able to go on a tablet and fill in that information when we're taking temperature checks, when we're doing times and so on. That will get sent and that everything gets recorded for everything that we produce. It will also help us to HACCP control what we do. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. So as we're taking temperatures as food is received, right the way through to the process of it going out, it is all tracked. So if there is a problem, we can go, here's that piece of information. So it helps us to track that. On the other side of that, it also will help me because I'm taking the place of an entire multinational company, so it will help me to formalise all my nutritional information, all the kind of stuff that the stuff that I do on my end. It will bring all that together, so it'll allow me to actually keep control of that, because it can, you can imagine anything that is government controlled, as I'm sure you're all aware, it can get out of hand. So it helps to control that, and helps that pull that in line, and it gives me that backup in that if I am inspected, because they don't usually give you much notice, I just have to press a button and everything that I've input over those months and months of producing all these records is just there. I don't have to sit there and troll through and try to bring it all together before their arrival. So it helps us from all aspects. So.
And you've used this before, correct?
No, I
Oh,
haven't,
you have
but
not? Okay.
Sarah is actually one of the people who has helped develop
Okay.
it. So I know it's good.
Okay.
So,
So I do have a quick question.
Yes.
Will this also track the, for lack of a better word, inventory of food that is consumed?
Yes.
To reduce waste?
Yes.
If it's not, okay.
yeah, so, and that will go along with the click and how we actually, when we buy products, our discounts are multi-level. Sometimes, we've got food products that actually have 3 or 4 different discounts put against it for varying reasons, and it will also help me to track that. We have commodities that come in from the government. It helps to track that, shows where that's all being used. So it just helps to keep that all formalised. It helps to keep it all together.
Excellent. Any other questions?
All right.
So we have a motion to approve the Protein Food Service Advisors, or the agreement with Protein Food Service Advisors Menu Solutions.
I'll motion.
Mrs. Jones.
Second.
Mrs. Hutchison seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is a request for approval of resolution for 2023 Boone County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. Mr. Mark?
A little bit of history. There was another multi-hazard mitigation plan developed in about 2017. You may know about it. We weren't invited to participate in the way of schools, so what they figured out is that the more buy-in that is signified by participants, the more there was a chance that there could be positive outcome to their requests. They meaning our county. So they invited all 3 school districts to participate. Chief Smith and I both participated in this development. There wasn't anything significant that was put in there on behalf of schools. Specifically, there could have been areas if we had like areas that were in a floodplain, but we don't. Central is a little bit worrisome, but it's actually not even in a 100-year floodplain because it's just high enough. That's an example. There's always the chance that we could want to do something tornado, but again, we're not in a pathway that's significant to tornado enough like it would be in Kansas and Texas. So there weren't high priorities put on anything that would have affected us, but us having had the opportunity to participate adds credibility to the county's plan from FEMA's perspective. So what they've done is they've asked the entities, Scienceville, Western Boone, Lebanon, and all the other entities, to adopt it by their governing boards, and that's what this resolution is requesting, your approval of our county's plan.
Okay. This is through the EMA, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution for 2023 Boone County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. Any discussion?
Well, I'm glad we were finally invited to participate. And, you know, being invited to participate finally, I think was a good move.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, request approval of overnight trip for Hattie B. Stokes fifth grade to Camp Tecumseh.
So Kelly has requested on behalf of her fifth grade to go October 3rd and 4th to Camp Tecumseh. It's an overnight trip, so we're asking your approval for the overnight trip.
Always an excellent trip. Do we have a motion to approve this trip for Hattie B. Stokes?
I'll motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I do believe we do have
I do
one
have, I'd
additional.
like to make a motion to add an agenda item, which is the request to extend school resource officer agreements.
All right. So we have a motion to approve the extension of school resource officers. Or to add to the agenda, that's right. So a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda item is added.
Are you ready to talk
Yeah,
about
I'm
it?
ready for you to talk about it now.
Very good. Our school resource officer, school police force contracts currently expire on June 30th of each year. We've continued to work with Chief Smith on bringing the board a recommendation for wages, salaries, et cetera, and configuration of the officers. So we weren't at a place to bring that formal recommendation to the board this evening, but we want to make sure that our officers are completed, right, through the next month. So this request is to approve an extension of their status quo status on their agreement, current agreement through July 31st. At the July board meeting, Mr. Dennis or I will bring a recommendation for a new agreement with Lebanon School Police. That will put them on a different path of an August 1 to July 31 cycle. But that really does truly align more with their work schedule and the beginning and end of the school year as well. So that's probably a good move as we move forward anyway. So this is to request extension of the school resource officer agreements on a status quo basis for the officers listed in your background notes.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the extension of the SROs through July 31st for the list of individuals on that attached sheet there? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Jones. Any discussion? Good hop skip to get it all aligned?
Yep, we'll get everything lined up next
Yeah.
month.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is upcoming board meeting and events. July 18th is the next regular board meeting right here at the community room. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you all.